When I spoke to Mark Regev shortly before we came on air, he's a senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, I asked him what he knew of the incident that had killed the 21 soldiers.
Unfortunately, the IDF is still looking into the facts, but it's clear it was a major tragedy. 24 soldiers dead, most of them reservists, which mean these are young men with young families. And this is a blow. Israeli society is always very sensitive to casualties. And so today is a difficult day for Israelis.
I mean, does it reflect, in one sense, what is going wrong? That here we are, after all this time, and Hamas is not defeated?
No, it's difficult. But I think we have no choice but to continue. It's interesting. If you look at conflicts in the past, there's been a certain amount of controversy in Israel. But in this conflict, if you ask people in any survey, do they support the goal of defeating Hamas, of dismantling its military machine, of ending its rule over Gaza, of doing everything we can to get the hostage backs, you get huge wall-to-wall support from left to centre to right.
Indeed, but not in the way that the Prime Minister is going about it, which is why we saw hostages' families breaking into a meeting yesterday. It's why we have the former Prime Minister Ehud Barak telling Benjamin Netanyahu, in the name of God, go, and calling for elections. This must give the government pause for thought.
Of course, one always has to think about strategy, even on a day when you don't have casualties like we do today. It's important to make sure we're on the right track. But I think everyone understands that leaving Hamas in power is just a recipe for more of this further down the line. In other words, if you find a quick Band-Aid solution, so maybe people can be very happy, they think, oh, finally, ceasefire. But if that leaves Hamas in power, then we're just back to square one.
Well, you will know that there are widespread reports that Israel offered a 2-month ceasefire in exchange for hostages. Can you verify that or not?
I cannot confirm that. We are not talking publicly about the details of the discussions going on to try to see more hostages released. But
you're not ruling it out. Just to be clear, you are not ruling that out as one sort of option.
We will agree to a pause in the fighting as we did in November in order to get our hostages out. That is clear. But the idea that we will agree that Hamas stays in power in Gaza, that's just to see another October 7th massacre again.
Okay. But sorry, forgive me. Is Israel prepared to stop the hostilities for 2 months to allow a release of hostages and more aid to get in?
Once again, we're not talking about the details of any talks that are going on now with the Americans, with the Egyptians, with the Qataris to try to release more hostages. Obviously, that is a goal. And if there is a serious opportunity to get our hostages released, we will embrace that. But if there is now, maybe, I hope, a chance to get our people out, those over 100 hostages who are still being held in Gaza, it's only because Hamas is under enormous military pressure. They're not going to suddenly become humanitarians.
Can I ask you about the price, though? Because the feeling in Israel today on the news of 24 Israeli deaths, when every day the number of Palestinians killed is over 100, and we're talking about a death toll in Gaza among Palestinians of up to 25,000 compared to 200 Israeli deaths. Now, I know you are not going to want to talk about equating, but you must recognise the feeling of anger that people will feel about Israel perhaps only recognising its own deaths.
I wouldn't overstate that, but if I recall Britain's conflicts in whether going back to the Falklands or in Afghanistan and Iraq, obviously the British people felt for your casualties first and foremost, and then discussed the other casualties in the conflict. I think Israelis are exactly the same. Of course, we prioritise, obviously, our own casualties. We feel for our own people, our own families, but I think we're no different from any other country, including your own.
The former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert has, in an interview with Der Spiegel, talked about well, he's called for an American-European intervention force in the Gaza Strip. Is that something that you think the Israeli government might consider as an option?
My Prime Minister has repeatedly said that when this is over, in the initial period at least, there'll be a need for an overriding Israeli security control. It means we might be on the outside, but we will go in when we need to go in because we don't want to see a resurgent terrorist. The goal is to see Gaza demilitarized and de-radicalized when this is over. Now, the demilitarization, I don't think there'll be a lot of people volunteering to do that. It'll fall upon us. We hope that for the de-radicalization, we can find partners, including Arab partners, who will help build something there that it'll be a lot better than Hamas was.
But you talk about de-radicalisation. You recognise that what's going on, not least in the hospitals around the south of Gaza, will be radicalising people.
Exactly the opposite, if you don't mind me saying. Because if Hamas is defeated, that's a blow to radicalism in Gaza. It's a blow to Hamas. It's a blow to radicalism across the Middle East. It's a blow to radicalism across the planet.